I got four little bullet points about Mom Danny. But the first thing I want to say before I get into this rant about Mom Danny and becoming the mayor is that I'm actually very happy he won. I am very happy he won because I detest establishment politicians so much that I would rather have a far left or a far right candidate win an election than an establishment hack. That's just my personal opinion. If you don't like it, fuck off. I don't give a fuck. But yes, seeing him beat Andrew Cuomo was like, ugh, I love it so much. So right off the bat, I'm happy he became mayor because I mean I wish it could have been the other guy, the Republican. That would have been nice for New York. The what's his name? The Charlie's Angels, not Charlie's Angels, the Devil's Angels, what Hell's Angels. I don't know, but the other guy would have been a lot better than Andrew Cuomo or Mom Danny. But here we are. I'm just happy that Andrew Cuomo lost because what he represents is the rot of politicians left and right. So thank God he's gone, right? However, I disagree vehemently with pretty much all of Mamdani's positions. I think the rise of democratic socialism comes from what Ben is getting at because while I disagree with Ben, he's totally right about something that he didn't really say, but I know this is how he feels because it's true and I feel the same way, is that we are crushing our citizens. We are crushing our citizens because of crony capitalism, because of all of these subsidies to big corporations. We have to jack off our friends and families that are in these other industries, which crushes the free market, which crushes small business owners. Because of that, and then combine that with all of this, we need to get free stuff and, all these unintended negative consequences that arise from these socialistic programs, it is crushing and crushing our citizens to the point where they can't afford a single emergency. It is true that one catastrophe, you're one medical emergency away from being financially destitute for the rest of your life. It's true. It's undeniable, and people on the right don't like to admit that, but it's true. And we've seen this happen time and time again, where the uniparty, the uniparty was squeeze, 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 and squeeze our citizens to death, right? Financially, emotionally, spiritually, they would squeeze socially, they would squeeze our citizens to death. And what happens when the Uniparty does this? You get populist candidates like Trump. You get populist candidates like Mamdani. Because they're essentially pretty similar in their rhetoric, at least. Trump is an establishment hack now, but when he first came onto the scene, he was definitely a far right populist. He's not that at all anymore, unfortunately. But this is what happens. That those are the natural repercussions you get in the political sphere. You get people who are actually listening to the people, and this is why Mamdani won. He won because he was the only motherfucker in New York City talking about New Yorkers. He was the only bitch talking about, I don't care what's going on in these other countries. I'm here for New Yorkers. There was one thing that he said. They were asking him a question about what country would you visit or what would you do, and everyone like gave all these answers, and he was the only person that said, I would stay here in New York City. Now, yeah, maybe that's a canned answer, could have been a canned answer, but the fact of the matter is that these populist candidates like AOC and Bernie and Mamdani and Trump and um, Thomas Massey and people, these populist candidates, they resonate with Americans. They resonate with Americans for a particular reason because these populist messages are focused on the population here, right? They're focused on Americans. Now, where the convergence happens is with the left populists, a lot of their policies have unintended consequences that are devastating to the people they want to help, right? And on the right, it can sometimes be the same thing. And so, while these two political ideologies are very similar in how they approach their constituents, they tend to not always have a lot of economic sense to them, which is why libertarianism comes in, right? That's where that comes in. Um, and so that's why he won. And anyone who doesn't understand why he won, I don't think you're paying attention. I don't think you're paying attention. If you don't understand why he won, then you haven't been really paying attention to like the plight of Americans and how they're frustrated with these parties, these two parties. And right now Republicans are not giving anything. They're giving uniparty. Republicans are giving uniparty. They're not giving populist at all, like they campaigned on. And I can rant about that, but I'm gonna save that. I'm gonna save that because I've ranted about that a couple streams ago. I'm not gonna drag the Republicans tonight. So the rise of Mamdani is obvious to me. He's a far left populist. It makes sense. We're in an age where people hate the Uniparty. People hate what's going on. People are broke. People are poor. People are struggling. And so, of course, this type of messaging is exactly what they want to hear. Okay. But the issue is the free stuff that he's saying he wants to give people, it's not free. The shit that he wants to give away for free won't be free. That's just not the way the world works. And the problem with a democratic socialist is that they don't understand the means of production. They just don't understand how things are produced. They have no idea about how that works. They are purely focused on distributing those goods, distributing funds. But they don't understand how funds and money is created. They don't know how profit is generated. They don't know how revenue is generated outside of just stealing it from people. Literally. They don't get it. And so, and you can understand this in two of some of his biggest propositions in rent control and government run grocery stores. These are two incredible examples of what I just said about how socialists don't understand how the means of productions works. They just don't get it. All they know how to do is steal from other people, from more successful people. That's all they know how to do is how to steal from successful individuals. That's all they know how to do, right? And they're obsessed with arbitrarily distributing these goods and services, right? So let's talk about rent control. It sounds cute, right? Rent control sounds cute. But I don't understand why these are things that people are still trying to do in 2025. Like I really don't understand. We've tried this. We've tried this time and time and time and time and time again. And it in fact does not work. It just doesn't work. I wish it worked, rent control, but it doesn't. Okay? How is it that all the places that we have rent control in the US of A, the places that we have rent control coincidentally have quite literally the highest rents in the country? Coincidence? I think not. So let me explain something to you. When I studied nutrition at Miami University, they didn't teach me shit about economy or economics. They didn't teach me shit about economics. But I do know how supply and demand works. I do. When you freeze the rent on a property, and I also can speak about this from the perspective of a landlord because I'm a landlord. I know I don't talk about that very often, but I'm a landlord. So of course, I'm a slumlord. I'm a slumlord. So we have properties. When you freeze the rent of a property, the very first thing a landlord is going to do, they're going to stop upgrading the property. They're going to stop putting in upgrades. They're going to stop putting in money to maintain that property. It's the first thing they're going to do. Now you have apartments with frozen rent that are not being maintained, right? Also, as an aside, rent control is so bad in New York City that once upon a time, landlords just burnt the buildings up because they could not procure any profits from their properties anymore. That it was better off just getting the insurance money from burning the places down. Look it up. This is history. This is how bad rent control is. So then what happens is people are not building anymore. Because why build something when I'm not going to be able to make any profit off of it? Why put in the effort and the financial investment when I'm not going to get a very good return on my interest, on my investment, ROI? So what happens then? Well, supply is down. Supply is down, right? And so then what happens? You still have an increasing demand because this is New York City. We've got a high demand, but a decreased supply. So what happens to all of the non-rent controlled apartments? Well, the price goes astronomically up. That's what happens. Now, were you one of the lucky few that got the lottery ticket? You won the lottery and you got into one of these rent controlled apartments? What tends to happen then is that these rent controlled apartments, people stay in them forever. They stay in them forever. They transfer them from one family to generation to generation. And there's no rhyme or reason to who gets these rent controlled apartments. And again, what ends up happening is if you're not one of the lucky few people to get into one of these rent controlled apartments, then your rent is astronomically priced, way above what the market value should be because of the diminished supply in apartments. This is fucking common sense. Common sense. So, rent control, landlords are not fixing shit in rent controlled apartments. And I don't blame them. Now, let's move on to grocery stores. Grocery stores. By the way, if you have a comment you want me to read, then you need to super chat me. Grocery stores. Let me let you guys know. I know someone who owns a grocery store. And I know the basic stats about grocery stores. And I will have you know that grocery stores, on average, they only have a profit margin of about 1 to 3%. So those that are not business savvy, let me let you know that is extremely slim pickings. That's an extremely slim margin, and there's not much room for error. There's a lot of moving parts when it comes to running a grocery store. Too many to really count. I mean, buying the produce, buying the product, transportation, paying for the transportation, paying for the mileage, paying for spoilage, paying for theft, paying for salary. There's a lot of shit that goes into running a grocery store. And so when you already have these very, very, very slim profit margins, having the government to subsidize the grocery store becomes really crazy and really quickly. Again, When I learned about nutrition at Miami University, they didn't teach me shit about economics, but I know how supply and demand works. And once again, when it comes to a subsidized grocery store, they are selling these products below the market price. There are hidden costs. They have to pay for it and pay for that loss somehow, either on the front end or the back end. And what happens is they steal more of your taxes. That's what they do. Your groceries are not less expensive. They're just taxing you more. They're not cheaper. Spoiler alert, they're not cheaper. But it's worse than that. It's much worse. It's not like a net neutral situation here, right? It's not like they're just transferring the cost that you would have paid for the groceries onto your taxes. It's worse because now you have, once again, a higher demand and a lower supply because they can't sustain those lower prices for long. So they have to do one of two things. They have to either limit what you can buy, they have to start rationing. Long lines telling you what you can, what you can't buy, how much you can buy. Bitch, you can only buy one avocado. I'm a millennial. I need to eat my avocado toast. I need more than one avocado. Do you know what I mean? You can probably relate to that. So then you also have the fact that private sector, they'll move away from these grocery stores because they can't compete with those smaller prices, right? Listen, they can just steal the government can just steal money from people to subsidize their lower prices at their store. The private sector can't do that. So they move away, right? Then on top of that, you have poachers. You have people that are going to be coming to the grocery stores to buy products to then resell them at market rate at other places. So once again, it does not work. We have tried these ideas before. They don't work. And you can try to make them work, but they don't work. Defund the police. The only people that want to defund the police are rich white people and or just rich people who are not in harm's way of crime. These types of people are what I call champagne socialists because they can afford to have these political positions that are absolutely devastating to the communities that they affect. It's interesting. If you look at a poll, if you look at the polls, people in the city are not for defund the police. Black people who suffer at the hands of crime disproportionately more than any other race, because there's other black people, these people do not want cops to go away. They do not want to defund the police because they've seen what happens when they don't have a strong police force policing their neighborhoods. People die, people are raped, people are killed, people are robbed. Life is a living hell. It's typically the people in the suburbs, people in the high rises with armed security, people that can work from home, have their groceries delivered, children are in private school. These are the people that can afford to support something like defund the police. Mamdani can afford to support defund the police because he's never faced crime before in his life. Never had to. He's a rich kid. I think the private school he went to when he was younger was like $60K a year. Good for him. I mean, no, listen, I'm a capitalist pig, so like, no hate from me, honey. I went to private school too, so I get it. But the difference is that I'm not a champagne socialist. I'm not advocating for shit that I know will harm other communities outside of myself. So that's really all I have to say about Mom Danny and democratic socialism. I don't want to get into all the nitty gritty of the free buses and free childcare, free. I don't want to get into all that because it's silly.